What is this kid's name? Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host of the Toast, Rytos, here to talk to you about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. And I'm so sorry it took me this long to say it, I've been... for the first time in my life, we have like a 2-ish week backlog, kind of. And it's in part with working the editors for the channel, finally having a leg up on the podcast and all that. So I'm not used to not recording a video the week it goes out, which one has been great for my mental because whole man was that stressful. But two, it does make me not realize when videos are going to come out. So I realized a couple things last week, but you know, as of recording this is the first one I've really like recorded and planned to be in June. That being Happy Pride. I don't think I said that yet on the chat. I mean, I said it on like social media post day one, but like I haven't said it in a video or a podcast yet. And that's just, I didn't know when these were coming up, and I was like, oh shit, I kind of forgot to. But no, as always, Happy Pride to everyone. And if you have a problem with happily and openly celebrating Pride, you're not welcome in my community, and you can unsubscribe. I don't want you here. As someone who is pansexual and kind of gender fluid, for lack of a better term, it's something that, you know, I love the journey of self-discovery for anyone who hasn't gone through it, is going through it, is still going through it. I think we're always going through it, you know. I think self-discovery is just a constant thing we're all doing. I'm still discovering things about myself to this day. A big part of that's live it on your own too. But as always, Happy Pride. And again, if you don't like, oh, I don't support Pride or whatever, go fuck yourself. I just wanted to say that, but also, would you know it? Today, this recording is the finale for Season 2 of the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. It is Season 2, Episode 69. How fitting that we get an Episode 69 finale right in the middle of Pride Month. God bless. For those of you who don't know, the podcast is in seasons, technically. And they're just... I needed to pick an arbitrary number, because on Spotify... you don't just list episode, you list episode and season. And I was like, when do I want to end seasons? And I was like, you know what? Make 69 the last episode of every season, because that's funny. And it is. So, welcome to episode 69 of season 2, otherwise known as episode 138. It's crazy to think about the fact that we're coming on to nearly 3 years of this podcast. That's insane to me. It's something that I struggle to think about a lot. You know, I'm really overwhelmingly gracious, or I have overwhelming gratitude for the platform you guys have given me. That I can be here making silly YouTube videos for this long and still support myself and my family with it. It's constantly humbling, and I have to not think about it throughout the day, because thinking about it is overwhelming. You know, it's one of those things I'm like, oh, I'm just going to bottle that, because if I try to unpack that, I'm going to have a breakdown. But as always, just thank you. You know, thank you for giving me this opportunity and this dream job to hopefully entertain and be at least something you listen to in the background while you're playing video games, you know, which is what I spend a lot of my time doing with podcasts. But, you know, thank you. As far as today's episode, I don't have anything super special planned. I think for the first season finale, we did Oops All Questions, and we've already been doing Oops All Questions for the past like month and a half. So I actually did have two things I wanted to talk about that aren't like, one of them was sent in a bunch and one of them wasn't sent in at all. So I made them like topics rather than individual questions. And then when we run out of time on those, we'll go to the questions. So the first topic I want to address, this is something I got, I want to say at least 10 different emails about. And I was like, at this point, I'm just going to make it a topic. Too many people are asking basically the same question. And it's, hey, what the hell is going on with FLaF at Freddy's? So I admittedly have not done an incredible deep dive outside of the things other people have posted. So obviously, take everything I say with a grain of salt, factually based. But from as far as I'm aware, a couple days before now, somebody, apparently the official composer for FLaF at Freddy's on their Patreon, made a post that was essentially saying like, well, now that the game's been officially canceled, I'm just going to release all my soundtracks here. It's a shame, I enjoyed working on it. And, everyone immediately blew up on Twitter like, FLaF at Freddy's is canceled? And there's a huge debate on like, do we take this person's word as fact? Because they are the official composer, but like, it is just like a person. It's not like Click Team or Scott or like anyone like it's just like somebody on the team is claiming the game is canceled, and then that's that was the whole conversation. And there was heated debate about it. I was always of the opinion of like, hey, there's like NDA about these things. I'm not going to believe a cancellation until Click Team or Scott says something. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like, nah, they're probably wrong. And wouldn't you know it, a day later, they basically, after being emailed about it, they basically came out and said like they took down the post and said like, hey, I don't actually know if it's canceled. It's just been very quiet on my end, and I don't take anything I say as fact. And I was like, I kind of figured something like that has happened, but at the same time, with that response, genuinely, I think the thing that makes the most sense is the game probably is in at least a state of hiatus, if not canceled. And what had happened was, because Click Team themselves have replied on Twitter to other things where people are like, do we have any updates on FLaF at Freddy's? And Click Team's response was something along the lines of, we will share updates when we are able to, or something like that. Something that said like, there's been updates, but we're not allowed to say anything yet. So what I could totally see have happened, if it is canceled, that, it's on a quiet sense of cancel. Maybe they'll bring it back, maybe they won't. It's not being actively worked on. And via non-disclosure agreements or NDAs, whoever's working on the game can't just announce that, right? You're not, like, that's really, really, really poor form in the industry to just go out there and announce that outside of the official company announcing that. So what probably happened is, if it is canceled, this composer unfortunately made that Patreon post and then was like innocent. I don't think it was a like malicious leak or anything, but it was probably just like a, damn, I haven't had work for a couple months and I want to share what I've done and nobody's contacting me, so I guess it's canceled, and then made that post and then probably got contacted by Click Team or Scott being like, hey, you're not allowed to say shit like that, and then had to take it down and take it back. That's I could see that totally happening. But I'm of two minds. One, I really hope it's not canceled, because the demo we have, especially after the update to the demo that fixed a lot of the bugs and problems people had, it was genuinely a very, very promising game. The wall riding is very fun. The boost system is really, really well done. The jump scare thing is weird but manageable and fun. The mechanics themselves, I've said for a long time, all they need to do is, it's been a long time since I've played it, so I'm going off of memory here, but I'm pretty sure all they needed to do was fix how slow you go in the off-roading. Like, it takes you to a dead stop, which is tough. And then it was something about like fixing like the turning radius. I don't remember in what way, but something about the turning radius was a little weird. And fix the momentum loss on landing. Like you'll do this big jump and you have a lot of speed, and then you land and you lose all your momentum and bounce a little bit. And that sucks. That feels bad. But if they fix those three things, genuinely, it was a really, really fun kart racer. Like a weirdly competent kart racer. So all they would have needed to do is, fix those three things. I say this, I'm not a programmer. I don't know what goes into making games. So when I say all they need to do is, that could be months of work. I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know what it takes to fix problems like that in a racing game engine. But quantitatively, all they would needed to do is fix those three things and then add, more courses, more characters, more cars. And so, like, I feel like to cancel a game that nearly done
seems like a poor financial decision. I mean, I don't know the back end of any of this. Maybe the making the characters and tracks was the most expensive part or whatever. I don't know. I assumed making the engine would have been, but again, I'm not a game developer. I have no idea. So if it is canceled, that's a shame, because I think what they had was really, really solid, and I was looking forward to it. I hope it's not canceled. I genuinely hope it's not canceled. I would love to play a full version of that. Hey, at least we got a carton of Ban somewhere. Or is it called carton of Ban, or do I keep telling myself that? Because frankly, it should be called carton of Ban if it's not. Carting of Ban. Okay, that's fine. I don't know. We still have no date whatsoever on carting of Ban. I just know that apparently 2026. We'll see. On Twitter, they came out and said, like, it was really very funny after all the like drama about this. Euphoric Brothers golden marketing opportunity, quote tweeted and said, it's not canceled. And it was just a picture of their game. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's really fun. I'm excited. Look, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I've said this mostly on the second channel though. So on Rytoost, which if you're not subscribed, please do. But so many of you here might not know this. Kart racers are genuinely probably my favorite genre of game. I get the most. When I think about like what games give me the most like just sheer joy and that I'm really addicted to playing, it's platformers and kart racers. It really, really is. So when they're doing a FNAF kart racer, I'm like, let's fucking go. So I am a little bummed if it's canceled, but we'll see. On the bright side, on the good news of kart racing in horror, not only karting of Ban, say what you want about karting of Ban or Ban in general. The thing that is exciting, Kitty Kart 64 is inching closer and closer to being done. For those of you who don't know what Kitty Kart 64 is, I played a demo on it. I believe it's at least, I know I streamed it, so I want to say it's at least on the unlisted VODs on this channel in the stream VODs playlist. But like, yeah, do we have any updates on when this comes out? I've pulled up the Twitter account. This is what everyone's so hard to work on the game. More announcement coming soon. September last year. No, we just keep getting like cool footage. There's a Discord. Let's find this out live. I'm gonna join the Discord. Jump scare. Small dev update. I'm slow right now. Do various life things. Once we get the ball rolling again, you'll be the first to see. Okay, so yeah, they're just trekking away as always. Independent game development's kind of always like this, which is totally understandable. People have lives and they're doing this for free, ostensibly. Hopefully they release it for money, because they put a lot of work into this and it's a genuinely good time. But yeah, there's a demo for Kitty Kart Racer or Kitty Kart 64. The demo is really, really interesting. I think it feels more like a creepypasta than a game, which is a cool experience. But I'm very hopeful for the full game. We'll see. I think if I can sell you on this game in any way possible, it's with this teaser they posted last April. So I'm going to honestly, Amanda, mark this out in the timeline. I'm just going to put it here. But yeah, first of all, crazy. That's a crazy teaser. Like, I see that. I'm like, I want to play this game so bad. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. Complete non sequitur. Another game I'm really excited for that's coming out soon. They just announced it. There was a playtest of it a couple months back that I played and loved dearly. Happy's Humble Burger Farm. A classic, one that I've played plenty on the channel, one that many of us enjoy. They announced a release date and the announcement for the game, a friend slop version of the restauranting. What are they calling it? Happy's Humble Burgatory. Yeah, this looks really, really fun. 1 to 4 player co-op. It's perfect description from the tweet. Think Overcooked, but in dystopian hell. Flip burgers or die. So for those of you who haven't played Happy's Humble Burger Farm, first of all, you should. It's an excellent game, and I believe the game is free for like half a week to help promote Happy's Humble Burgatory. So, oh wait, the offer ends June 15th. When does this episode come up? This episode comes up on the 16th. You missed it, dog. It was free. You missed it. Sorry. That's really funny. But buy it anyway. It's a great game. You're essentially, you're in this simulation. You're trying to break out. And that's not really a spoiler. It's pretty, direct with that. But yeah, the main gameplay loop outside of trying to break out is that you work at this restaurant and it's horror themed. Scary things happen while you're working there. And if you mess up too much, something comes to hunt you, which is just a really fun concept. I adore the game and the endless mode that it came with. So the idea of being able to do the endless mode with other people, hell yeah. I didn't know this was going to turn into just Rye talks about indie horror games coming out, but there's a lot to look forward to. I feel like us as FNAF fans, we kind of get tunnel vision and damn, no FNAF news, nothing's coming out this year. Where it's no, there's a lot of fun indie horror on the horizon. But yeah, God, remember when we used to get news about FNAF games? Anyway, so that was something that all was a tangent about 5 Labs at Freddy's. I hope it's not canceled. It very well might be. This just means that I get to make my own kart racer horror game. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to bring up, nobody really sent in a question, but recently I was actually, speaking of podcasts, I was on T Dreads' FNAF Mysteries and Andrews in the Games. I might have said that title wrong. Sorry, Talbert Dreads. But we were talking about the plush bear, the psychic friend Fredbear, and what it might be, and he brought up to me loop theory, something I had not heard of until then. The idea that the FNAF 4 day minigames are the crying child in his own little purgatory loop after the bite. And that really, really piqued my interest because it mirrors how memory and death works in the books, right? How when somebody is unable to move on after they've died, it seems that they're kind of just trapped in a bad memory and need somebody to reach in and help them, which is what we see at the end of the Fazbear Frights books, where a lot of the victims from those stories are trapped in their own memories, and it takes, what is his name? Andrew and... It's not Toby. Why is Toby coming to mind? Andrew and... What is this kid's name? Jake. Where the fuck did Toby come from? Jake. It takes Jake using the remaining energy as left as the rest of the Stitch Wraith, using all of his remnant to reach out to those people trapped in their memories and help them into happier memories. And once he does that, they're able to rest. He's able to disrupt the cycle, and they can just have a peaceful afterlife. So when T-Dreads brought this up to me, it was kind of almost offhanded, but I was like, I kind of love that, and I want to look more into that. So I ended up doing some Googling, and as far as I'm aware, I'm new to LoopVictim, or loop theory, or whatever you want to call it, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but as far as I'm aware, the earliest mention I can find of it is from FNAFology, a fellow YouTube theorist who hasn't posted for a couple months, but, has a good amount of videos on... There's various theories, but this LoopVictim theory is really, really intriguing to me, and it seems like her premise is like was brought up. The idea that the FNAF 4 day minigames are this never-ending cycle of the crying child's memories, and psychic friend Fredbear in that way is Cassidy trying to reach out to the crying child and help him get out of that memory. It pulls on a lot of things. I'd been saying for a while that FNAF World is a retelling of Happiest Day, and I think most people agree with that. I'm not going to say I'm the pioneer of that idea, but it's similar into LoopVictim, is that the Happiest Day here is trying to essentially get inside of the crying child's memory and affect it in such a way that it turns into a happy one. And once it's a happy one, he can finally move on, which I think is very fitting that, we see in the FNAF 4 Day minigames. It's the week before his birthday, and then his birthday ends in tragedy. And then we see at the end of Happiest Day, it's the same birthday, a very similar looking location. So, it's the same birthday, same place, but he just gets a big cake and everyone's there to celebrate him. And it's just a good day. And that's when he's able to move on. That tracks exactly with what we see in the books. I think hearing that, I'm like, this kind of just seems canon to me. I just kind of love this theory. I've kind of tucked it right next to Stormister's theory about Scrap Trap looking like that, because Springtrap took pieces of Golden Freddy and affixed it to his body to repair himself after the fire of FNAF 3, which is where Cassidy attaches itself to William Afton's soul. It's just genuinely such a good theory that I think it's just true. But what I wanted to bring to this, besides just, hey, go watch that video, it's really good, is that it's really interesting to me thinking about what I've already thought about the Happiest Day. I made the theory a couple months, like half a year ago, about how Happiest Day as we see it, I think is a representation of the same thing for all the other MCI victims. And I'm pretty sure I've only watched the LoopVictim theory from FNAFology, but I know I looked on their channel page, and her next video is FNAF World is Purgatory, and the thumbnail says it's always been about the MCI. So she's probably on the same wavelength here of, if it's true that for the crying child, we're trying to interrupt this bad memory and make it a positive one, how interesting is it that the rest of the Happiest Day minigames of FNAF 3 is us going into a snapshot of a FNAF restaurant, finding a crying spirit within it and opening their eyes and making it a happy moment with cake. It really does feel like this is a concurrent through all of Five Nights at Freddy's, that going through these missing child incident victims and helping them break out of this purgatory, as it were, is, and that's what we're seeing in Happiest Day, is we're not playing an arcade game. The arcade game is just the lens that we're seeing what's actually happening in the universe. And what's actually happening is, at that point, I believe Charlotte, because, it's the puppet in Happiest Day, the puppet mask. I believe it's Charlotte reaching out to these victims who are trapped in their own memories and entering these memories and finding them and pulling them out of that, and helping them realize that they're dead and that they can move on, because as we see in Alone Together, I quote this book a lot because I think it's instrumental to understanding how ghosts work in Five Nights at Freddy's, because we basically get like a checklist from the grandma who is a ghost in that story, where not only does she say that a ghost can't move on without its memories, but that a ghost needs to see its own body, or its body needs to be discovered by somebody for its memories to come back. And until that happens, they just can't move on, and they'll just wander around the places they were when they were alive, which is huge information. And we even get a follow-up from she gives us literally like a checklist of the steps of a ghost reaching out to you. And it's like, at first you'll get dreams that aren't yours, and then you'll start seeing things that don't quite make sense. Then there's a whole important checklist. But that continues to line up with what we're seeing in the Fazbear Frights novels and in Happiest Day. The idea that these spirits may not even know they're dead. They're wandering around the Pizzaplex, acting as though like they're just like playing at Freddy's like they always did. And then it ends in a tragedy and they go through the memory again, and they're just not aware what's going on. It takes somebody going in and fixing those memories and giving them happy ones instead for them to be able to find peace and rest. It even circles back to Into the Pit. It's why I don't think Into the Pit is actual time travel. Regardless of what iteration of it kind of seems like time travel or not, it really, truly makes more sense, Into the Pit, for it to be a story of Oswald, because of his interactions with this ball pit that has some sort of spiritual energy linked to it. He's receiving the visions of the victims of the MCI, and the only way to and in the visions of them, being afflicted by their agony, which is represented by the Pit Bonnie, that monstrous toothy version of Spring Bonnie, and to destroy that creature, he essentially needs to help all of the MCI victims move on, which we don't see that in the book. We more so see that in the game. Because in the game, you see day one, you see the missing child incident, and then every day after that, you're freeing a different child from becoming the missing child incident, right? And it really feels like Oswald doesn't know, right? Like, Oswald probably does think he's time traveling, or even if he is or isn't, he thinks he's just saving kids, But I don't think Pit Bonnie dies in a world where the kids aren't freed. I think Oswald accidentally lucks himself into that, where in just trying to be a good person and helping these kids out, he's unknowingly stripping the power from Pit Bonnie. Pit Bonnie being the agony of these victims manifested into this monster. But in freeing these souls and helping them to move on by changing their memory of the MCI into a positive one where they've escaped, part of that power of Pit Bonnie gets stripped away from him. So it's a concurrent throughout the entire franchise that I really think this is just how spirits work. This is how memories work. This is how agony functions. This is how it all comes back to the purgatory of the mind and being trapped in essentially a bad dream, being locked in this bad memory and needing someone to positively affect it so you can move on. It's a really interesting concept that I think is just how Scott in Five Nights at Freddy's conceptualizes the afterlife, being trapped in this mental blockage. And needing somebody else to help you out of there. It's a really interesting, with all that in mind, it makes me even more of a believer in LoopVictim. I think that might be the thing I think most about those daytime minigames, is that what we're seeing is Crying Child's loop. That's what the Crying Child sees until eventually by the end of FNAF World, he can find rest, which is probably just after FNAF 6's fire. Not to say that the things that happen in those minigames aren't real. They're memories. I do genuinely think that happened to the Crying Child, and that bite is why he's like this. But because of that bite, that's what he's stuck in. Not to mention, LoopVictim works with Shadow Victim plenty. Shadow Victim being the idea that the Crying Child's presence is felt throughout this franchise so much because he was kind of just shedding agony around all these different locations. And once he finally died, his remnant kind of fled to there, which is why it takes disparate pieces pulling together in FNAF World and in the FNAF 6 Fire to pull it together until then he can move on. Shadow Victim's a discussion for another day. I made a whole video on it. I also didn't come up with that theory. It's another genuinely very good theory about the Crying Child. But just thinking about people being trapped in their memories, and to take it to a modern context of FNAF, it's very interesting that in death, we can get trapped in these bad memories and we cannot move on until someone helps us out. It's very interesting that Glitch Trap seems to take over the minds of living people doing the exact same thing. I think that's how Glitch Trap's mind control works. It's putting them in this never-ending torture dream that they cannot get out of until somebody else helps them to. And that's kind of what we see in it represented with Princess Quest. And maybe that's why it's represented with Princess Quest, because just like the Happiest Day, it wouldn't really make visual sense to directly show us that happening. But giving us the lens of an arcade game, we can then instead see it change and see it be undone. You know, the loop of Vanessa's mind is the Princess Quest game. It's defending yourself from the rabbits, getting caught, falling even deeper into the hole, and then once you finally think you're done, you rest and you wake up right back where you started. It takes Gregory's fighting against Glitchtrap to give the princess the out back into Help Wanted, and then she can take her own agency and escape, which ends the bad dream, which frees Vanessa of Vanny. Which is even why I'm all the more certain that Cassie is our next villain, right? Because in the end of Ruin, I still think the Brazil ending is canon, which is a crazy thing to say, but it really does make the most sense. Or the elevator, I could see that too, because, you know, we had those hints about elevators from Leon Riskin, which may or may not be bullshit at this point. But if the Brazil ending is canon, you know, Cassie has had her mind completely taken over by Glitchtrap at that point, where now she's trapped in a false memory, this looping memory, and it will take somebody else coming in to free her from it. My bet being Gregory, because I have a feeling that Cassie may have been the one to break Gregory from his memory. And maybe that's what Balloon World, or like a Balloon Boys Air Adventure, whatever the hell. No, that's the FNAF 3 one. How do I remember Balloon Boys Air Adventure, but I can't remember the arcade from Security Breach's name? But I think it's Cassie beating that and freeing. And again, is it that like their minds are connected to the arcade game? Kind of, not really. It's more of a representation. But like the representation we're seeing is that that's already been beaten. He's already been freed. And Cassie is the one who has done that for him. Do we have any evidence Cassie did it? No. I just think narratively it makes sense. It's also, now to be fair, it would be a really good amount of dramatic irony if it actually is an arcade, right? Because think about it, right? We see this happening in the spirit world metaphorically through arcade machines in FNAF 3. But when it's happening in the real world, to somebody who's alive, Glitchtrap is literally using an arcade machine to do it, which is like a fun bit of dramatic irony. It's irony that it's only for the audience. And I could see that being the way that works too. If it is literally from the arcade machine, it's hard to say really. It just, there's a lot of interesting overlap there. This whole train of thought came from just LoopVictim is a very good theory, and it gives you an interesting lens to look at the rest of the franchise with. You have to sit there and think, like, is Elizabeth's dream, you know, because it's interesting too, because getting out of your dream doesn't mean you have to move on, right? Getting out of your dream means you can, but it also just means you have your memories back. So we have to like look at different characters and see like who has their memories and who doesn't. The Mason Child incident victims, I don't think have their memories until they're able to possess the FNAF 1 animatronics. I think that's what Give Gifts, Give Life is showing us. Is Give Gifts, Give Life is an incredibly TLDR version of Happiest Day, of the puppet reaching out to each of those victims and getting them out of that dream loop, showing them their body in the animatronic. And I don't think the puppet stuffed them. I think the puppet led them to where their bodies are. And in that moment, they get their memories back and they get their autonomy back. So you have to look at, like, Elizabeth seems to be fully functional, which to me says that, you know, either she found her body immediately or she never lost her memories. And she seems to have her memories in how she talks to Michael in the final night against Ennard, where she switches to Elizabeth's voice and is like, didn't you want to be with her? Isn't that why you're here? You know, which says like, I remember who you are and who you are to Elizabeth. And same with William in that way. So it's really interesting. It really, really is. I wonder, you know, Michael Afton probably the same way. He, to be fair, he possesses his own body, so it's pretty hard to not find his body. But I wonder if the FNAF 4 nightmares are Michael Afton's loop in a way. I think that actually might have been addressed in Loop Theory as well. I don't know, go watch the video. It's a good video. We have like 10, 20 minutes left. I took some time to research, so I don't exactly know how long we've been going, but we have some questions from the email. So as always, if you want to reach out, there are two ways to send in questions and theories to this podcast. You can either go on the Patreon, which is in the description. I will always answer those first and fully to the best of my ability. And as just a thank you for supporting on there. But you can still just email Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That's free. It's in the description. You can copy and paste it because it's a pain to type out. And I don't guarantee. Now, the thing about the email, and this has always been true, I think some people misunderstood me on this. I don't guarantee that I'm going to be able to answer every single email. And some of them, I will look at a theory, and there's not much I can add to it. So, because of that, I just, if there's not much I can add to it, I'm not going to bring it up. And, or, I get a lot of emails, and some of them just get lost. Because I typically sort from new to old. So I can get more recent questions or questions about recent videos. And because of that, sometimes emails just don't even get looked at. So if it's been a month or so and I haven't addressed your question, feel free to send it again. I probably just missed it. Today, I typically don't like to do this. But I genuinely really want to talk about both questions. Often people will send in multiple questions for an email, and I will only pick one because I don't want to double up on, and I want to try to spread it out as much as I can to get as many different people as I can. But Asa, what can I say? You sent two really good questions, and I want to talk about both. So our first one from Asa, they, them, is, did we ever get a reason for the analog film aesthetic of Secret of the Mimic? Or at least anything that connects to it. Specifically, opening and closing the pause menu has a running film animation, and when you die, the screen looks like burned film. I think it's a weirdly specific detail, and all the explanations I can think of, maybe we're seeing out of a 1970s body cam, or the dreaded Arnold as a robot, really aren't supported by anything in canon. I don't think it's particularly relevant to anything else, and I guess it's always stuck with me as a weird detail to add because of that. But not even in the way you talked about where Scott likes to leave threads he can pull on. I can't see how he'd tie this in when I can't think of how to tie it into even anything else in its own game. It's a great question, Asa. I kind of forgot. I remember when we got the first teaser trailer of Secret of the Mimic, it ends with that burning film reel. And a lot of us were talking about, this is huge. What could this mean? Is the entire game footage that, William Afton's watching? Is it a recreation of something? And the game came out and they doubled down on that aesthetic, but then they didn't do anything with it. So a lot of us just kind of left it at the wayside and forgot about it. But you're right to call it out. It is weird that the game's aesthetic is a film reel and they never do anything with it. That's a weird choice. Why did they do it like that? I think what makes the absolute most sense, and I'm not saying it makes sense, I'm saying it makes the most sense, which is still not very, is your first option, is the fact that it's sort of a 1970s body cam situation. That where, I'm not saying there's, a rolling film recording camera strapped to Arnold's chest, but in some way, what Arnold is seeing, William Afton sees eventually. That's my best guess. Either that or it's just a cool aesthetic. But it's a cool aesthetic that's all over, because not only is it the film reel for pausing and playing, but you select your save file and your save file's on a film reel. Your loading screen is numbers that you would see on a film reel. It's all film reel coded. And is it just because it's cool? Maybe, but that feels irresponsible. So I feel like even if it's not an Arnold body cam situation, maybe there's cameras in the building that are recording on something. There's 1,000 explanations. I think in some way, what Arnold has done in Secret of the Mimic was recorded in a way that William Afton could then watch. That's my only guess. And then that's kind of how William Afton knows everything that's going on. Because other than that, you're right. There's no other good explanation because they never bring it up at all. But thank you for your first question. And then your second question, what's your stance on fanfiction versus theorizing? As a proud fanfiction writer, my stance has always been that theorizing is a type of fanfiction, like a subcategory, but I know some other theorists, not necessarily in the FNAF space, disagree. I just think it's interesting because fanfiction is not seen as respectable, at least in my experience, but theorizing is. And yet, according to my worldview, in order to make fanfiction respectable, you take away the precision of prose. Maybe I'm in my own head too deep. A little bit, but we all are. It's a great question, because I would say simply making a theory is not fan fiction, but applying that theory in any way is. You know what I mean? Like, if I sit here and I go, I think that, let's pluck a random theory out of the ether. We just talked about LoopVictim. If I sit here and I say, I think that the FNAF 4 day minigames is the crying child reliving his own memories and being stuck there. That's not really fan fiction. That's like it's just making a statement. Or I feel like we need more prose. But the moment you try to apply this theory in any meaningful way to a timeline, you begin crafting fan fiction. You know, I think people bristle at the notion because inherently it's fan fiction, which, you know, to some people they go, oh, well, I'm trying to figure out what really happened in the games. It's like, well, it's not, I think you're getting hung up on terminology, you know. It's still a fictional series at the end of the day, you know. The best, the most true answer to why did these things happen in the game is that Scott Cawthon wrote it that way. But we're trying to have a fun time and play in the space of, you know, like in the universe, why did these things happen? And like crafting a timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's is fan fiction. It's just fan fiction with the sole purpose of trying to be as true to the canon as possible. Because it's something that's not in the base game. It's something that we are creating to live in the world of the base game, which is by definition fan fiction. I think part of the dichotomy as well comes from the fact that many people use the term fan fiction to disparage theories they disagree with. It's something I've seen a lot in the space where like people were like, that was a good theory, but then he just started writing fan fiction at the end of it. It's like, okay, hey, again, all theories, when applied to a timeline, are fan fiction. Because it is a theory, so it's something that's not directly in the game, and we're inputting it into the world of the game to explain the game. It is fan fiction. It's just fan fiction with the express purpose of understanding the game in front of us. But I think because of, you know, general disdain for fan fiction that a lot of people have for some reason, and the fact that people already use the term fan fiction to disparage theories they disagree with, a lot of people bristle at the idea of like, I'm not writing fan fiction, I'm theorizing. It's like, okay, you're writing fan fiction in theory space. You know what it feels like? Hey, you know what it feels like? I wonder if a kernel of that, like the seed of that is in some way misogyny, because it really feels like, I'm not playing with dolls. These are action figures. Because you get to have the hypermasculine impulse of, I'm doing a logic and scientific based thing. I'm not doing some girly writing in my diary. It gives that energy, you know? And I do wonder if that's just misogyny, which, hey, it's in everybody, you know? It's once again, almost every kind of phobic boils back down to hating women in some way, right? Like, I could talk about that for days. You know, happy Pride, but even like homophobia comes down to misogyny 90% of the time. But to get back to our point, it really does seem like it's a knee-jerk reaction against fan fiction rather than it being inaccurate. Because to accurately speak, making a theory about a video game is fan fiction. Like, it's just we are taking something that is not in the game and trying to explain the game with it. Fan fiction doesn't have to be inaccurate. You know, a lot of people think that it can't be fan fiction because, like, well, we're trying to be accurate to the game. Hey, the best fan fictions are accurate to their source materials. I think, you know, people bristle because the idea of fan fiction is I'm taking something that didn't happen in the game and putting it in there, or didn't happen in the book and putting it in there. But with a series like Five Nights at Freddy's, where so little it happens in the game, technically, any theory didn't happen in the source material. We're trying to fill in the blanks of what hasn't happened. You know what I mean? So I get it. I understand. There's that, you know, because there's also the fear of fan fiction doesn't have to be accurate to the games. You know, like, I can write a fan fiction about how Michael Afton's actually never got scooped. And, you know, it's an AU where he goes on and lives a nice life. And that's a fan fiction. But it's not a theory, you know. It's because, I mean, it goes directly against what actually does happen on screen. So I do get that worry, but I think it's the knee-jerk reaction is more baked into the prejudice against fan fiction than it is about. I think that worry is much less part of it. You know, that because we don't get to that conversation without nuanced conversation about fan fiction. And I feel like 90% of the people who go, I'm not writing fan fiction, they're not going to have a nuanced conversation about that. That's my thoughts on it anyway. But it's a very interesting conversation. But you see why I wanted to talk about both these questions. They're good questions. And thank you for them, Mesa. Our next one comes from Joe, him. Big fan of the podcast. Well, thanks. Me too. I have a question regarding FNAF 2's date. On night 1, Phone Guy says, welcome to your new summer job. However, when you get your paycheck, it's November 1987. Decidedly not summer. Could just be a mistake, but that's not really a satisfying answer. I've seen theories that say you're just getting paid in November, but you worked in the summer. That doesn't really make sense. And I just had, this could be explained. Thanks. This is a classic theory. This came, people had these questions when FNAF 2 came out, because very easily just playing the game, you go, hey, why are we getting a paycheck in November if he said it's a summer job? What? I think there's two ways, because, there's the funny answer of, actually, wouldn't you know it, FNAF takes place in the lower hemisphere. We were wrong this whole time. It's actually summer in November for them. But no, I think what makes them, there's three logical possibilities. I think most people settle on the same logical possibilities. The first one, like you said, not satisfying. It's probably just a mistake. Because this is FNAF 2 we're talking about, right? Like, FNAF 1 was made from the seat of Scott's pants with very little planning and blew up in a way that he made FNAF 2 within, 3 months. So the idea that he accidentally, did a November paycheck, but then, forgot that he said it was a summer job, he made the game in 3 months. Incredibly possible. That's just a small mistake. Option 2, summer job isn't talking about, when the job is taking place, but rather the quality of the job. The idea that teenagers will take up a summer job in between years of high school to get some fun spending money. That's when a lot of 16-year-olds get their first job, where it's either waiting tables. I waited tables a lot, even throughout college. Or whatever those minimum wage jobs that people are always like, oh, you don't deserve more money, which is stupid. If a job is worth doing, it's worth paying somebody a living for. But that denotation is colloquially known often as a summer job. So even if it's not taking place in the summer, the idea of just watching a restaurant overnight for not that much money could be described as a summer job. That's another way to look at it. The other option that I've seen floated around, especially in a post-FNAF movie world, is that this is, FNAF 2 is Michael Afton revisiting closed locations to try to find William Afton. And he's getting paid in November for doing that, but listening to pre-recorded voicemails that happened when the restaurant was still open during the summer. So I could see that too. But I think that makes more sense for FNAF 1. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for FNAF 2, personally. But yeah, those are the three possibilities people really toss around. Genuinely, I think it's just a mistake. I know it's unsatisfying, but it's FNAF 2. It's a game that was made in his fucking garage in 3 months, and it's I would not doubt if a minor detail like that was just a flub. But thank you for your question. Our last question comes from Jay, him. Hey, Rai, something I've always been curious about is the existence of Mrs. Afton, since to my knowledge, we have zero evidence for Mrs. Afton existing. Could it be that she simply doesn't exist at all? If Mrs. Afton doesn't exist, is it possible that Michael, the crying child, and Elizabeth aren't William's biological children? I haven't read the book, so I'm not certain if there's any instances of adoption or kidnapping and brainwashing children to make someone is their real parent, but could this be the case with the Afton children? Their question. It is a fun theory, right? But I will say the lack of a Mrs. Afton, I wouldn't say necessitates this, because Fiona Murray is the first mom we've heard about in the entire franchise. Scott just forgets about him often. Where's Mrs. Emily? So we get one offhanded mention of her in the books when she leaves Henry for his obsession. But it is a question that he probably just forgot, or I didn't consider it relevant to the story, so she's never been brought up at all. Or, the closest we get about a Mrs. Afton is the fake backstory that Vanessa gives to the therapists. The idea of like her father, Billy A., was abusive and took the wife to court to get custody, and she testified against her mother because her father made her, and her mother later ends her own life because of it. That could very well be the real story of Mrs. Afton. But there's a more fun possibility, and that's that there is no Mrs. Afton. So what does that mean? Well, it could be adoption, could be kidnapping. After all, it does seem like the twist of Garrett of the FNAF movie might be that Garrett is Michael Afton, because like he says I killed your brother, and I do believe him, but why did he like kidnap him? That's weird. So it could have is a kidnap brainwash situation, maybe. It's also a really funny possibility that none of the kids were real. They're all robots. I don't think it's true, but it's a funny possibility. We know there's robot kids somewhere in this franchise. Whenever I think about the theory of is Mrs. Afton not real, I'm teleported to Rusty Lake for a moment. For those of you who don't know, Rusty Lake / Cube Escape is a series of like escape room mobile games that are really, really in depth, and they're all like horror themed, and there's this weird, hard to understand ongoing storyline about samsara and rebirth and the central lake that's like the secret to everything. And it's a weird story that I've spent months in the past trying to understand and didn't get anywhere. But the one of the antagonists of that family is just like a weird guy. He's just like a weird guy who's kind of a villain, and he's got these kids that for a while you're like, where did they come from? And once you know there's one of the escape room games, you're going through the family tree and you learn about all these family members, and you find out he made his kids in a lab. He took biological material of himself, I won't specify what, and just like combined it with some stuff in a petri dish and just made biological children in a laboratory by himself, essentially. And every time I think about, is Mrs. Afton real? There's a part of me that's like, did William Afton just like asexually reproduce, and like made his kids in a petri dish? We have no evidence for any. It's more likely he made 3 robots, but it is something that comes to mind. Pun not intended. Happy Pride. No, but I think the most common, the most likely answer is the real story of Mrs. Afton is she did exist, and her story is very similar to what is described in the therapy CDs of Security Breach. That's my best guess. But thank you for your question, Jay. And once again, if you have a question on the podcast, you can submit on the Patreon for priority answering, or you can submit them via email at freddyfazbearpizzapodcast@gmail.com. It's in the description. Copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to see you. What the hell? We hope to enjoy your future patronage. And we hope to see you next season. But bye-bye for now. And happy Pride.